Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I am joined, as always, on today's recording on Thursday, the 18th, for Friday, the 19th, if folks are wondering, by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Ruhnke. JT, how are you?
I'm fine. I hate Twitter. Twitter continues to just be my worst enemy. And man, it's like
it's not the best, worst place in the world.
It's the worst place in the world. I wouldn't even call it the best. I feel like I've now bound my soul to Twitter, so I can't escape it, right? There's nothing I can do about it, but I'm not happy about it, right?
Twitter is real life, and it's the most important thing going on in real life. So yeah, but because of those two facts.
For context, I didn't realize that now, in order to live stream on the platform, you have to be a Twitter premium subscriber. But it's not just the basic one. It's either the premium one or the premium plus one. I don't know. So I bought the basic one for the Hot Read account, but that doesn't work. So I was like, what does the basic even get you? So I thought the basic one would even get you the one where you get over 200. You get over 240 characters,
right.
Longer ones. So I just started putting a bunch of gibberish in until I hit the word limit, and then it said, oh no, you don't have to be a premium subscriber to that. You have to be a premium plus subscriber to get the longer tweets. I don't know what's going on anymore.
Well, I don't think that's true, because I don't have premium plus, and I can do that.
That's what you just said to me. The point is, I feel like I just gave $3.50 to Elon Musk for nothing. And I know that you're the Elon Musk guy, you like him, but how can he just took $3.50 of my money? The way that you feel about GE water filters, I feel about Twitter. I would rather just not have to deal with the app ever again in my life.
There's a lot of people that share that sentiment with you, so you're not alone. You can see it as annoying that we're having to spend more money to live stream to Twitter, or you could see it my way, which is I think that really separates the chaff from the wheat in terms of getting a lot of crappy live streams off of our feed. Only the highest content, most driven folks are going to be there, and that's going to include us. So you know what? That really just it thins out the herd, and we have less competition for people's eyes and ears on Twitter is all I see. But yeah, Stoney in the comments asking, by the way, speaking of things that happened on Twitter that aren't Twitter related, can we talk about the state of food in this country where dog food is named the best fast food? This is in relation to the fact, are you drinking espresso at 4:11 p.m. in the afternoon?
It's bad, man. It's bad. But yeah.
Okay. All right. We're going to just roll right over that concerning detail. You sent something to Stoney and I and Zach the other day about how your homeland's favorite cuisine, Skyline Chili, was rated. Who rated this number one food? And what was it?
I'll have to go find it, but it was rated the number one best regional fast food chain in America, which is the correct answer. It is the best.
Stoney recently famously went to Cincinnati, tried it, and declared it dog food dreck nonsense. Yeah,
the problem. There's two problems with it. One, he got it to go, which Skyline to go is never.
You got to sit down and eat your Skyline.
You have to sit down and eat the real thing.
All right.
Two, the philosophy on Skyline Chili is if you don't like it, try it again. There's just no there's no answer.
It's like black licorice. You just have to keep forcing yourself to eat it until eventually you will develop a taste for it.
Yeah. So I think whoever did this ranking, I can try to go find it, but they were.
Is that not the mark of a good food, that instantly it is delicious and instantly it is appealing to a wide audience? I feel like that's kind of important. If it's only good when you force yourself to eat it over and over and over, and then your body just acclimates to the poison you're putting in.
It was from USA Today who did this ranking, I guess.
Okay.
So
well, I know what publications not to trust now. I really don't have a dog in this fight. I've never tried Skyline Chili. I don't think, unless I did and didn't realize it. But I've had chili before. Is it different from regular chili?
Yes, yeah. It'd make your insides crawl probably.
Oh, okay. That's all right. Well, today we've got a couple of things to get into. It is part 2 primarily of our Titans training camp preview. JT, this is the last episode we're doing before we have actual like players out on the field again. We're at the Titans facility again. We're watching new things happen. We have up-to-date information. That is exciting. It makes our jobs, a little, it's exciting and not exciting a little bit, because it makes, we can't coast anymore on old topics. Social media, our social media presence, we got to be on top of the ball. No more posting YouTube clips on our YouTube channel that are from episodes 5 months ago, but they still apply because nothing's changed. Things are going to start changing. We're going to have news cycles pouring in starting next Tuesday when the Titans report to camp and we're out there. And that's exciting. So number one, looking forward to that. Looking forward to our audience returning. This is the time of year where I think everybody returns from their football hibernation, and the numbers across the media landscape go back up because people are starting to tune back in. So if you're back for the first time in a while, welcome back. We're happy to have you. We're happy to be entering this football season together. So we're doing that, going through the biggest storylines on the defensive side of the ball. We did offense on Tuesday. So after you're done listening today, go back one episode in the feed, listen to that one, because it was also a lot of fun and I think an insightful amalgamation of the last 2 months. If you're wanting to know, okay, I've not really been paying attention to the Titans for the offseason. What's been going on? What are we looking for? We kind of boiled it all down for the offense in that one episode. We're doing the same today with the defensive side of the ball. So we'll touch on all of that. And then we are going to do a way too early 53-man roster projection, the primary goal of which will be to go back in a month from now, look back at this and laugh at how wrong it probably is when half the players on there aren't even on the team anymore, and you have all this churn and a bunch of new names and faces, and suddenly it looks very different. Or maybe I just nail it out of the gate. First try, one try, I'm Nostradamus, and then you won't be able to tell me anything. So either way, I'm a winner on that front. And then lastly, we'll get to a segment we've not done on the show in a long time. The news with producer JT returns. It is news season. We got a couple of news items to get to, including an interesting tidbit on Derrick Henry and his departure from the Titans that came out in a damn Pompeii Athletic article this morning. So a couple of things there, and then we'll get out of here, and we won't return until, again, we have football, active new football to talk about. So that's exciting. Let's start today, JT. Do we want to start with the 53-man roster or defensive questions? What are we thinking?
I think we should pick up our conversation where we left off with the defensive, because then we can come back to an all-encompassing 53-man. It'd be
that
weird
wraps it up.
It'd be weird to talk about the 53-man roster without talking about the storylines that could get somebody on or off the 53.
The defensive players in question.
Yes,
that's fair.
yes.
Well, you went first with the offense. I'll go first this time. And unlike with the offensive side of the ball, where it's pretty obvious, whenever you're talking about a all-encompassing offensive discussion, it's like, okay, let's start with the quarterback and work our way out. On defense, there's a lot of different ways I can go here. And I also found it, I sat down thinking this might be harder in terms of, the way I've approached both of these exercises is just look at the Titans roster, the depth chart, and just any question that comes through my mind as I read the names, I'll write that down. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have as many with the defense. I have more. And they're not as obvious, I think, as the offensive ones. These are things that we've not talked as much about, I think, throughout the offseason. So where to start? I'll start with the most broad question I have, and then we can kind of work our way in. So how about I start with, I wrote down just depth emergence. This entire team is kind of by necessity a stars and scrubs type build. They've put together a team that if the top line guys go down at any given position, things are going to get probably pretty ugly pretty quick, unless some of these depth guys that right now you look at and you get kind of, you're like, I hope that guy does not see the field or else we're going to have issues this year. Unless those guys prove us wrong in the next month. And in training camp, they start to show out, they start to improve their stock within our hearts and minds. I just look at all of these guys on the depth chart and, looking left to right, that first line of just starters, I'm like, I like that. I think that squad can play. And then you go to just line 2 and it's like, holy crap. That's all of these dudes are playing in the preseason. That's kind of a nightmare roster. At least it feels that way. So a big part of our conversation today, I think, is going to be those guys that we think maybe, what we've kind of thought, oh, this guy could emerge. He's a rookie, could turn into something. He's got upside. He's got tools. He's got this, that, or the other. Which of those guys are going to emerge? And I guess to this overarching question, the more important thing is, will any of them emerge? Because if they don't, this is going to be one of the more what's the word I'm looking for? Not aggressive, but one of the more dramatic stars and scrubs build, I think, in the entire league this year, because I really do believe You look at Vegas, and they're, I think, plus 1,100 odds last I checked to win the AFC South. They're odds on favorites to be the worst team in this division, which could be the case. But I think there's a world in which the top line talent on this team is good enough to win ball games, good enough to be competitive this year. It's just a matter of whether or not they can stay out there, they can gel, they can live up to the potential we have for them. So yeah, well, what do you think about that? Do you agree that this is a really is a precipitous drop off after the starters on this roster, especially defensively?
I 100% agree with you.
I think it's
on
worse
that.
on defense, by the way.
I think it is as well. I mean, you look at, it's not a perfect kind of 1-to-1 of where someone's going to play on the defense, but if you look at like an R-Lads chart or something, which I'm assuming is kind of what you're going off of here,
right?
You look at like, you go down like that second list, and like the only real starter that you can see on there is Elijah Molden, who is probably belongs with the stars, maybe the best scrub in that scenario.
I would flip Jamal Adams and Elijah Molden, honestly, and then yes.
And then you could say Jamal Adams was,
right.
Probably the top of that list, and then behind him, it's like, unfortunately, the next best player is like Trey Avery.
Are both rookies.
Like,
I think it's two rookies. I think it's Elijah Molden, and then it's Cedric Gray and Jarvis Brownlee Jr., and then the rest of them I'm scared about. Everybody else I'm like, I don't.
The point being, I kind of put Trey Avery up there just because of the veteran and just being there.
No, he'd probably be 4 for me. But that's the point, is that because then it becomes Marlon Davidson, Keandre Coburn, and Rashad Weaver is up there. That's fair. Caleb Farley. It's a bunch of dudes you're like, oh no.
TK McClendon, maybe bounce back second year, I guess, or third year. But I agree with you. And I think one of my questions that I had can probably be packaged in with this one here. And what I wrote down was rookies who must make a name for themselves in camp.
Okay.
So who is that? I think there was a lot of talk about, the guys like Gabe Judy Lally, who are just fighting an uphill battle no matter what. From him specifically, I think after guys like, Trey Avery and Caleb Farley, like there is a lot of room for somebody to emerge and become that
at the cornerback position,
other guy at the quarterback position that could come in and be a solid depth piece. He had a really nice OTAs, but like we said, let's get the pads on, and can he continue to be that shocking diamond in the rough that went undrafted, and the Titans end up finding a really nice piece in Gabe Judy Lally. Another guy in the cornerback room, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who Kenneth calls out in the comments here. Jarvis Brownlee is the best bet, ? I mean, when you go back and you look at OTAs, we talked about him in the draft, the draft cycle, about how he could be a real factor and he could find a key role on this Titans team. The Titans end up drafting him. And then, in OTAs, he really didn't show much. Like he was not a guy that popped off the practice field. And
he started hurt, and so we didn't see much of him. Correct. And then we saw some, and it was okay,
lackluster.
Sure.
But I think that
notable.
He was a guy that we really believed in going into this training camp and OTA period after the draft.
But when we saw him in Mobile at the Senior Bowl, and neither you nor I didn't know who Jarvis Brownlee was. I couldn't tell you. You said that name to me, and I said, "Who are you talking about?" And we came away without, nobody said, "Hey, look at this guy." We just looked, and he immediately caught our eye. So it was kind of a night and day situation from what we saw then to 3 months later, what we saw on the Titans field.
Yeah, and when you talk about his role on this team, he fits a lot of the same traits that a L'Jarius Sneed or a Cheeto Awuzie and a Roger McCreary have, and we've really been expecting him to be that number 4 depth cornerback behind the top 3 or so. So I'm really interested to see what he can do to shore up that depth and provide confidence that this is a deep cornerback room. And then finally, like you said, Cedric Gray, I mean, in a linebacking room that we kind of pigeonholed ourselves at the beginning of this entire offseason, talking about how Cedric Gray has to wear the green dot. And really in OTAs, we saw him not really get that chance. And
the Titans said best we can do is Jack Gibbons.
And Jack Gibbons,
that's who you're going to get, and you're going to like it. Yeah.
To get his praises and get social media attention. Will Levis throws an interception to him that goes on the internet, and he gets a lot of praise from a lot of coaches in this coaching staff for the Titans. And so are we going to see anything more from Cedric Gray? Was that more of the rookie learning period there, and now they're going to instill a little bit more confidence in him to kind of take that next step and prove that he can be a starter despite being a 4th-round pick? I think those are 3 guys that can help this kind of scrub depth that they have become a little bit more confident and feel like this team has a little bit more depth to it.
I agree. And I'm glad you brought up, I will transition from that to my next question because we kind of started it with Jarvis Brownlee Jr. I'm going to bunch 2 guys into one conversation to kind of wrap up our corners discussion. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. and Gabe Jeudy-Lally. You mentioned both of those guys. The thing I wrote down was, does Jarvis Brownlee Jr.'s stock come up in the next month? And does Gabe Jeudy-Lally's fall back down to earth a little bit? And I'm hoping for one of those things. I'm not hoping Gabe Jeudy-Lally to kind of fall off. No, I think it'd be great if the Titans did find. It's been a while since this team has had a guy that was a late round draft pick, or a UDFA who really, more than just like, wow, that's really nice. Like the last major, I'm trying to make sure I could dot my I's here. The last major one I can think of is Tier Tart, where it's like they really found something in the guy.
I was going to say Tier Tart or David Long Jr. kind of fits into that kind of category.
Yeah, and he was a 5th rounder, so that's kind of borderline. But like good teams find dudes, you're like, I can't believe that guy was a UDFA. I can't believe they got that guy in the 7th round with a flyer pick. You know what I mean? If Gabe Jeudy-Lally became that for the Titans, that would be great. But, and I think the common thread between Gabe Jeudy-Lally and Jarvis Brownlee Jr., who's picked the 2 longest names on the team to talk about at the same time, is that I suspect that the way that they looked in May is going to look different from how they look in August because of the fact that in May they're in shorts and t-shirts, and in August they'll be putting the pads on. And to make the steel man argument for not giving up on Jarvis Brownlee Jr. just because he wasn't a guy we talked about much in OTAs is that, like I said, you go back to Mobile, he really impressed us. He was wearing pads in Mobile. They were playing football, like actual football in Mobile. And the thing about his game in particular that really impressed us and caught our eye was that this cat is a pit bull. This guy is a smaller frame. I mean, not small, but it's smaller in terms of cornerbacks, on the smaller side of the coin. And yet he plays like he is one of the biggest guys out there. He plays with this ferocity, this physicality. It's the reason why pre-draft we wrote in our Fitz article, our do and don't draft guide on BroadwaySportsMedia.com, the Titans should target him in the 4th round, and they did because we thought he'd be a perfect fit for Denard Wilson's identity on defense, the way that they were building clearly a cornerback room of guys that, like, the whole goal is just nobody gets off the line of scrimmage. Everybody's going to get pressed into the ground the minute they try to come off the line of scrimmage, and there's not going to be receivers out there because they're going to be getting beaten to a pulp by the bullies on the line. And that's what he is. And so part of it was being injured. Don't get me wrong. Part of it was that he missed some time and was kind of behind the 8 ball as a learning rookie. But I think once he gets the pads on and he's allowed to actually lay into some of these guys and really be physical with them, I think you're going to see more from Jarvis Brownlee Jr. And so along those same lines with Gabe Jeudy-Lally, when he starts to get, be forced to be physical, play that Denard Wilson style of ball, you can get, like, you're actually playing the game. Will it change at all? It's similar to the way we talked about Jaquan Jackson on Tuesday, right? It's where, wow, in shorts and t-shirts, this guy looks great. But in the wise words of many a football knower, everybody can look good in shorts and t-shirts. Like you gotta look good when you put the pads on. And I'm not saying Gabe Jeudy-Lally can't be that guy, but the last available evidence we have of him in pads was what got him undrafted, right? It was what was at Tennessee, where the reason why you didn't really know who he was until he started to make a name for himself at Titans training camp. I'm hoping that he proves that he's figuring it out and he's got a great situation, a great fit here in Tennessee, and they found a gem in him. But I would not be shocked if within a month's time, we are like, wow, this JBJ cat is who we thought he was pre-draft. And this Gabe Jeudy-Lally guy, there's a reason why we didn't know who he was until May.
Yeah, I agree with you there. My next one here on my list, and I'm glad that we kind of were able to talk about other things than the obvious unfair storyline of T'Vondre Sweat and what.
Oh, we're getting there. We have to get there.
We're getting there now. I'm glad we didn't start with it though.
Yeah.
We can go that way now.
Okay.
I think that's just one that we have to address. Like,
so did you write down why is he fat and bad? Is that what you wrote down?
No,
that's what the zeitgeist is telling me the question should be.
Yeah, the question should be that. The better question, I think, though, is that what will we see come first practice? Like I like that is just the question I want answered is he there? Like I
Well,
like
can I ask you a question? We
sure.
talked on Tuesday about how Will Levis is a guy that that first practice or maybe that first week, whatever happens, like you better come out strong. Is T'Vondre Sweat, is he number one on the rankings of guys that must start strong on this roster just from a narrative standpoint? I think he
Absolutely,
is.
but like, what does start strong mean? Like, is it
Be out
just
there
being
is
being
step
out
one,
there?
I think, is be out there.
If that's the case, I agree that is
Well, will
what
that
he
be the
needs to
bar?
do.
Are people, I really think that's the bar. It's a little bit like
It's the
if you've ever
bar for
seen the
people
Diary
who
of a Wimpy Kid
understand like
movie.
the
There's a
player. Like,
here's a weird cut for
okay,
you. Diary of a Wimpy Kid movie. The older brother of Greg Heffley,
right,
Roderick.
yes.
His wise sage words to his brother is that you just set the bar so low, you fly under the radar. That way, anything you do is subverting folks' expectation. You're raising the bar for yourself as long as you set the bar in the basement. That's where T'Vondre Sweat kind of is right now. Is that if he's just out there day one, the haters won't be able to go like that. There's that argument's off the table. Now what? Now he has to suck to be able to hate him.
Yeah, I would agree, and I bet I don't know if it's next Tuesday or Wednesday, whatever the first practice is. You can bet that all eyeballs will be on the warm up period of practice, and everybody will be looking for number 93. And if that is not if he is not out there, then there is going to be some talk. And if he is, I feel like we're going to be able to move on with our lives and then continue to kind of monitor his progress throughout the first couple of weeks.
So Kenneth says in the comments, I've been defending Sweat, but if he shows up out of shape, not practicing, etc., I'm going to begin to heel turn, which I understand. That begs the question, JT, what would be worse for him if he shows up and at the beginning of practice, we're all like, guys, T'Vondre Sweat is out here. Let's go. It's time. It's the T'Vondre era. And then he immediately gets put on his butt and he's the slowest guy on the roster. And we're like, oh, this guy needs to cut some LBs. No more cheeseburgers for this cat. That or him just not being there at all. What would be worse for him from a narrative standpoint?
It feels like it's a double-edged sword, right? Because if he shows up,
neither is good, but both of these things would be bad.
Like, I would rather the player be there, but
yeah,
like,
I'm with you.
in this possible
because
scenario,
then we can, as
it's better
T'Vondre lovers, we can say, well, at least he was there, step in the right direction. At least he was there.
I mean,
hey,
if he's there and he's not producing to a level that a rookie should, I feel like the guys who are out to get him are going to spin that now. They were unhappy that he wasn't there, and now he's there, and they're going to spin that away that is just not fair to him. It's an unfair uphill battle for T'Vondre Sweat. And I think that it's going to be a battle all training camp on that front, I think, for sure.
I think another interesting element of T'Vondre is once he is out there and we've crossed that bridge, it's like, okay, now we're playing football. Let's see how he does playing the football. Something we didn't see much from him in the spring was like being out there on the field. But what we also didn't see by necessity is we didn't see him doing anything with Jeffrey Simmons. We saw a little bit of T'Vondre in the spring, but we never saw him alongside Jeffrey Simmons. And a big part of why I think he's going to work for this team is because when I envision T'Vondre Sweat on the line of scrimmage, I'm envisioning him right next to Big Jeff. And those two being I think, force multiplier for one another, their differences in styles allow for them to complement one another. And I think it's going to be exciting once they're both out there, which all indications from Jeff, who talked on the radio earlier this week about how he's going to be out there good to go. And all indications from the end of training camp was that T'Vondre will be good to go once training camp begins, or the end of OTAs rather. We should see them day one. And the first day they're wearing pads, I'm going to be intrigued whether you're out there or I'm out there, we're out there together that's where my eyes are going to be glued, is what are those two doing together?
Yeah, I think that is the force multiplier is going to get people excited, I think, for sure. And kind of, bring some stability to this defensive line that has so many question marks. It feels like the defense, it really is unfair to him because you're putting so much pressure on that tandem working, right? We've talked about it all offseason. Like, Harold Landry works, Arden Key works, this front of the line works, this secondary could work, this linebacking core that may not have the pieces it needs to compete at a high level works because they're gonna have T'Vondre Sweat and Big Jeff up in the
Yeah.
front, and that's going to create such a problem that everyone else, even if they aren't these top dogs who are absolutely excelling at their position, most notably the edge and the linebacking core, it won't matter because they're going to have the advantage from the start. And if that is not the case, then I think we're going to have to start having some conversations about, okay, is this going to be able to work, and who's going to have to step up in other areas because that advantage no longer is there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Here's my next question, my next narrative to watch. Let's there's a section of my notes here as I was kind of free forming my thoughts that I just wrote in big scrawled letters that I circled multiple times. Spine of defense, and the subheading was who's going to cover people? Who's going to defend the pass? Anybody? Any volunteers? Can I get a raise of hands on who's willing to do that? We've espoused this issue, our concern for this issue for the past 2 months now. Hey, middle linebackers. Hey, safeties. Somebody's got to cover these tight ends and running backs and slot receivers coming across the middle of the field. This spine of this defense is, in our minds, kind of a black hole for decent coverage. It is the inverse of what they got on the outside, because these cornerbacks, the top line cornerbacks they have in L'Jarius Sneed and Chido Awuzie and Roger McCreary, not worried about those guys. They're going to be locked down. It's going to be cool. But in the middle of the field, all that effort on the outside maybe it may be wasted a little bit. It may be for naught when you've got Evan Ingram twice a year running for, catch and run for 140 yards after contact a game because they just run him on an 5-yard in-breaking route up the middle against Jack Gibbons, and then he's gone for a touchdown. It's like that's not going to wash. And so I guess to actually I've got to pick one of these questions under this heading. I'm going to make it Jack Gibbons. I wrote down why Jack Gibbons, just why, with many question marks, because that was one of the things I was most surprised by in the spring, how much they were utilizing him, and in particular instead of Cedric Gray, and all of the things we've heard from them, all of the vibes being around the building, the way that they carry themselves, the way that they're utilizing him in practice so far. I'd kind of be surprised at this point if Jack Gibbons isn't a guy that is starting, or at least is in the captain's seat for that starting job. It's his to lose this August. And as I've said on the show many times, half of his game I really like. And the other half, not only do I not like it, it doesn't work. And let me get this clear. This is not personal. I like Jack Gibbons. He's one of my favorite guys to actually talk to on the team when we're out there. Very cool guy. I would be friends with him if I was on the team, 100%. I would, you know what? I'd like to be friends with him now. Jack, if you're seeing this, I'm sorry, buddy. Let's be friends. Side to side, sideline to sideline is where I'm concerned. Getting uphill on the y-axis, this guy can play, and I understand coaches looking at that and saying, "I want this guy out there because that's a nice trait that he has." But trying to guard these athletes in space and move sideline to sideline, he's just not athletic enough, or at least we've not seen that from him yet. And so, what's the plan? If you do plan on making him the starter, what is the plan to mitigate that issue? What is the plan for when he is the entire game targeted by a really shifty tight end or a really shifty slot receiver or a really shifty running back? And the offense says, we're going to make this guy cover us. And then it's not working. Like, what's the contingency plan there? I don't know. And that's a big question. With most of these questions, we have this could happen, or we're proposing prescriptions here. I don't have a prescription for this. I don't know. It's a big fat question mark in my book.
And so, to answer your question, I think the answer is that there's going to be no answer. Like, none of these guys in the linebacking core are going to be able to do it. And I think as I look more about at this Titans defense, the answer to that question, I think, is going to be their most recent signing, Jamal Adams. I think we had this discussion with a couple of us, even Zach Lyons over at Football and Other F Words, that when Jamal Adams was playing last season, his best came during that time, or the Seattle defense's best came at the time when he was playing healthy. Yeah. And what Jamal Adams has really become these past couple of years since his kind of all-pro seasons has been that he excels in the box. And so I think when you look at a guy who is going to, he cannot cover outside of it.
I was about to say, gets
But
excels in the
that's
box, but not doing the covering things, doing the other things. That's where I
but
get it. It's just
the plan right now is that if none of them can um, be able to do this, you have a low risk, high reward kind of guy who I think the Titans are betting on to kind of round back into shape and to form to be able to do that. And I think it kind of calls back to the conversation we had on last Thursday's episode. It feels really like we're just going to have a rotation of guys who are very matchup dependent, and it's almost like there's going to be more put on the outside guys to alleviate some of that pressure
I
on
mean,
the
I
inside.
don't think that's a feels like. That has to happen, right? It has to.
And so with all that saying, I don't think there is anybody on this team who will be able to do that. If there was, there probably is Cedric Gray. Like Cedric Gray did not have great coverage numbers in his last season.
It was fine.
It was fine,
fine.
but it's not like it's not the guy that you want to be covering those guys all the time. He has the speed to do it. I
But
don't
are
know if
you
he
sure
has
about that? Like in comparison, if I had to pick, it's him. It is him.
Yes, I think I agree with you, but
Like
it's
if these are my options,
I would agree. I'm not happy about it in his first year being
But
the
it's
guy,
the best
but
of the options. Yeah.
Zach brings up an interesting point. James Williams, I mean, there's a
Well,
reason that he
so
was a
Zach, to
seventh round
answer
kind
Zach's
of guy
question, Zach asked, didn't James Williams have a really good coverage grade in college? It was
as a
better than
safety.
I was about to say, it was better than these other linebackers because he was playing safety. So, like, by necessity, yes. He's now, they're going to transition him into linebacker. He is also one of the, it's really, if I'm looking for coverage linebackers out of this crop of guys, right? Jack Gibbons, Kenneth Murray, Cedric Gray, Otis Reese, James Williams, Luke Gifford, Chance Campbell, Garrett Wallow, JoJo Doman. Those are all the inside linebackers on the entire roster. My pick is give me Cedric Gray, give me Otis Reese, who we'll talk about more at the 53-man roster. But I think he's like if I had to pick between Jack Gibbons and Otis Reese, I'd want to see a lot more Otis Reese in training camp. And then it's James Williams. And two of those three guys are rookies, and all three of them are not projected to be starters at the position. And with James Williams, as Zach, to further answer Zach's question, the reason why we're not really bringing him up as a policy prescription here is that he didn't that wasn't a thing that he was not out there much. Like he was physically out there, but they weren't utilizing him. He was being treated like a guy that is not going. If he does see the field one day, it's not going to be anytime soon, right? It's a slow transition for a late round draft pick who is very much a flyer. He's changing positions. That's like he's under construction, I guess is the way to say it. And so I think our ultimate answer here is it's Cedric Gray, but to slightly alter a quote from Sir Winston Churchill, Cedric Gray is the worst coverage linebacker option on this team, except for all of the others. Like that is what he is. And so ultimately it's like average, but if they could just have one average coverage linebacker, I'd feel significantly different about this spine of this defense. So
yeah, I'm with you on that one. As Stoney
seems to agree in the comments, by the way.
Interesting to bring to Zach to bring up James Williams because I agree that he should fill this role, but the talk this spring was not overly glowing of Williams, and I feel like outside of JC Latham, it's like these other kind of rookies have. It felt like they've been taking their time with these guys. It hasn't.
Well, JC was a resounding double thumbs up. Tavondre was a big thumbs down.
Yes.
Cedric Gray, they didn't have a third. Yes. Cedric Gray was confusion, thumbs sideways. James Williams was a thumbs sorted down. Who else is on this team? Jaquan Jackson was a thumbs up. Jaquan Jackson. Jalen Harrell was a thumbs down. Yeah. So you heard more about Gabe Jeudy-Lally, a guy you didn't know until he actually was out there, than you did about these guys that were drafted for the most part. Mm-hmm. So that's And as to put a button on this, as Zach says, every tight end and running back is getting doubled. I'm not sure they will, and I'm not sure it will matter. Ultimately, my prescription to you, the listener, is just bet the props on receiving heavy running backs and tight ends against Evan Ingram. Props will be in the best bet gauntlet this year. I can guarantee you that. There's going to be
DeAndre Swift and Khalil Herbert props are
they might
week one.
Yeah,
Cole
those
Kmet,
two might have more receiving yards than Roma Dunze, more receiving yards than all
Cole
of their stars.
is going to be
it's going to be the running backs. Their tight end, whose name I'm totally blanking on.
Cole Kmet.
Cole Kmet, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns week one. Cole Kmet, Write it down. If he's on the waivers for fantasy, pick him up. Wave it. Take a flyer on him week 1. I would say. Okay. What's your next question, JT?
My last question here, I think, is just L'Jarius Sneed. I'm really interested to see how, we've talked about his, his kind of management of those knee issues. And I know how that has been a hot topic even for OTAs. I'm interested to see now, as we go into training camp, how much do we really see him out there continuing to kind of load manage that knee? Even in training camp, how much of an influence does he have with this team despite having that load management? I'm interested to see how they utilize him with the younger guys, how they utilize him in kind of some of these drills, even just being out there. Will we see more of him this training camp, or is it really just kind of when we get towards those joint practices and those later preseason game, is that when it really is go time for L'Jarius Sneed?
Right. Well, what I wrote down was kind of along these lines. What did I write down? Yeah, here it is. Cornerback marquee matchups. This is more or less of a question and more of a statement. I'm stoked to see the Titans starting 3 cornerbacks go up against the starting 3 wide receivers, right? Like L'Jarius Sneed up against Calvin Ridley, Cheeto Uzie up against DeAndre Hopkins, Roger McCreary up against Tyler Boyd. Those are going to be box office. Like, that's going to be Hollywood. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And so to L'Jarius in particular, I think he will be out there more. I definitely do. Will it be in a limited capacity? Yeah, maybe they'll make his training camp partner DeAndre Hopkins, because both of them are going to kind of be in and out. They can they can go in and out of the building together, and they can be buddies. But yeah, I'm stoked to see those guys. So I kind of a short analysis on that one, but I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and then my last, as with week 1, I have some gross ones that we can talk about here at the end. But I have one more real one that's not gross, and it is a pass. Is the pass rush going to be at a market disadvantage? Now, you might on the surface say, yeah, probably, because the pass rush is like a weakness of this team right now. Both depth and top line talent. It's not awesome. But what I'm talking to in particular is one of the biggest, and definitely the thing that stuck in your mind as the season went on last year, things that we heard about and talked about during training camp last season was, man, this offensive line is getting their butt kicked. Arden Key is coming off the field and telling us, we're making Instagram and TikTok shorts of Arden Key. How many sacks did you have today? 9 sacks. That's crazy. Like, that was a thing for a couple of days in a row. And that was a canary in the coal mine for, hey, that's not just this. At the time we kind of took it as, is the Titans pass rush going to be top 3 in the NFL this year? It was the inverse. It was this is the canary screaming in the coal mine. Hey, this offensive line blows. This is what's going to be. It's going to be like this all year long. Your defensive line, the pass rush is average. The offensive line is bad. I'm confident that Bill, I almost said Bill Simmons, not Bill Simmons. Bill Callahan is going to get this offensive line into average shape this year. It may take a little bit, but I think that's where they're going to get to. We've talked about that. So I'm curious to see whether or not we have that same canary in the coal mine moment where it's like, you and I are on the sidelines, turn to Jim White, like, Jim, I say Jim because he records all the little stats at training camps, at practices. When was the last time you recorded a sack? And then I'm picturing him flipping through his legal pad, and he's like, Thursday. Oh, 4 days ago there was a sack. Like, that's what I'm worried about. And if and when that happens, are we going to learn our lesson from last year and say, okay, maybe, because some folks are going to be like, Titans offensive line has not a lot of sack at training camp in 4 days. Has Bill Callahan worked his magic already? Maybe. Or more likely, this pass rush blows, and you're like, the Titans are going to record 7 sacks on the year. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if we get to that point, I'm vowing today, write this down. I am pledging that will be my take. Not that the offensive line is awesome, but that I'm concerned about this pass rush.
So we're going to learn from our mistakes from previous years. I appreciate the growth. I agree with you. I think it's well,
don't compliment me too hard, because when we get to the 53-man roster in a second, I'm going to double and triple down on some guys. It's irresponsible. I shouldn't.
Boy. Okay.
But so I'm not learning on that front, but on this front, I will learn. Yes.
I do agree with you that I think last year was kind of a more, it was a rejuvenation, I think, of the defensive line a little bit, bringing in those guys like Arden Key and kind of shaking it up with Aziz Al-Shire and some guys on the defensive side of the ball. And I think that what got us really excited. And it also was, I think, to a little bit of your credit, giving us a false sense of security that how could this offensive line get any worse from the year before? Like that was
Did
the
somebody say
take.
that?
I think someone did. I couldn't remember exactly who.
That's embarrassing. I bet that person got
However,
made fun of a lot for saying that.
but I don't
I hope they
think
didn't say it twice
I don't
or
think
all summer.
it can be blamed just down to one person. But I do agree that, you know, last year we kind of learned from that. You know, it's more important to watch the matchups than just look at the make believe stats. And I think as much fun as that will be again this year to look at, I am excited to see some of these matchups and see how both sides are able to line up against each other, and if that can tell us anything.
Yeah, no, obviously I agree because I brought up the question. I was about to say I agree. It's my question. Okay, here's kind of the gross ones I wrote down. Some of them are obvious that we didn't. So like one I wrote down is how is Jamal Adams going to be used? We didn't really go into that today, even though it's a big topic, because we spent like 30 minutes on last Thursday's episode talking about it during Taco Talk with Zach and Stoney. So if you're curious about Jamal Williams, you missed an episode. Go back 2 episodes in the feed and listen to that one after we're done here today. So there's that. There's also Caleb Farley. Is he going to be a thing now? I don't think so, but maybe. And I'll go into more on that in the roster here in a minute. What else did I say? We talked about Cedric Gray. What's his track going to be? So actually less gross things, which I think is more a reflection of even me, somebody willing to fall in love with guys. Like a lot of my gross ones were on the offensive side of the ball, guys that I'm like, they're probably bad, but a part of my heart enjoys them and hopes that they make it. This defense is so devoid of even sneaky good guys, sneaky bad, sneaky good guys. Even I am not in love with any of the weirdos.
You're telling me you don't have any hot takes about Garrett Wallow right now that you want to rip off?
Well, I've heard on the internet that some folks do. I do not. I guess I'm not a ball lover like some. I'm not grinding enough tape, is what it sounds
Fair
like.
Enough. Right.
Okay. So let's get to the way too early 53-man roster. I have put together what I think is going to be the Titans' final 53, which will be announced. I've not looked at. I've got to go back with it about a month from now. We'll find that out. And it's kind of annoying from a Titans media standpoint or any NFL media standpoint, because it used to be like auditions for the high school play where it was, there were callbacks. It was cut. You go from 90-man roster to 80 to 75 to 65 to there were cut downs to 53. They got rid of that a couple years ago. So you cut a bunch of dudes. There's just heads that roll everywhere on one day in mid to late August. Let's pull up the graphic, JT. And if you're watching with us live, by the way, I should say, I've not mentioned it today. If you're watching with us live on YouTube, we appreciate, or on Twitter or on Facebook, we appreciate you being here live today on a Thursday afternoon. Do us a favor. Let's take a quick moment of silence. We need you to go on over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. That's Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. Find this live stream there. Join the comment section there, like Zach and Stoney and Kenneth and Glory Day Sports have all been doing. We appreciate you fellas being here. Join them. We want to hear your thoughts, your comments, your questions. And while you're there, here, a moment of silence for you to take a moment, pick up your phone, hit that subscribe button for us, hit the thumbs up button for us. Let's do that real quick. Thank you very much. We appreciate you doing that for us. I wanted to give folks a chance to do that. So now that we've done that, you're watching with us live, you can see the screen and you can see how I've categorized this team into 4 categories. You've got the guys that are locks who are highlighted in blue. These are guys that there is no world in which they don't make the team. I think even if these guys got an injury on day 1 of training camp and didn't train throughout training camp, they're still making the roster. Green guys are the guys that I think are on the bubble but are going to make it. Purple, there's only one so far. Hopefully this list does not grow, but odds are it will. Guys that are put on the PUP, physically unable to perform list, or are suspended, which we had a couple of those last year, or are put on the IR in training camp. And then guys in red that are cut or waived. We'll eventually get to some practice squad projections, but right now, like that, who cares about that? So let's go through the locks because we want to talk about the interesting things. At quarterback, Will Levis and Mason Rudolph are making this team. At running back, Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard are making this team. So 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. Chika Okonkwo, Josh Wiley, they are making this team. At wide receiver, D-Hop, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Treylon Burks. I think folks might say Treylon Burks a lock. Obviously, no one's debating Hopkins and Ridley and Boyd. They're making this team. Is Treylon Burks making this team? I think by going by the way that I presented it here at the top, thinking about if this guy got hurt on day one of training camp and was, it was a week to week, day to day, and never actually got out on the training camp practice field, and then they got the roster cut down day, would they cut this guy? I don't think they would cut Treylon Burks in that situation. Part of that is because of the guys behind him. Like, are they really going to a guy, a Treylon Burks type who, had a grade 3 MCL strain and had to miss a month and miss training camp, but is going to be ready for the beginning of the season, for example. Are you cutting that guy to keep Kyle Phillips? Just in terms of use, like the way that you're looking to use guys, I don't think you are. So you're making a face, JT. Do you disagree that he's a lock? It sounds like you
no.
do.
I'm just interested with all of our talk on Tuesday that you don't have NWI as a lock as much as we use the saying.
Oh yeah,
I'm very interested.
You're arguing for another lock. Yeah,
I'm interested to hear
again. If he missed
what
all
the scenario
of
is for that,
I could see them falling in. Maybe who else? Maybe Kieris Jackson really blows them away and is a plus on special teams, and they're like, you know what, NWI. Sorry, man. We're not paying him much. He wasn't in training camp at all. He hasn't learned this new system, whatever. We're going to cut him, put him on the practice squad. I could see it. Do I think it's no, I think it's like a 1% chance it happens. If you wanted to convince me to make NWI a lock, I would, but I didn't in this situation. Okay, so we'll continue. 4 receivers are locks: D-Hop, Ridley, Boyd, and Burks. Offensive line, we'll talk more about this in a second. I think it's a Thunderdome. I think there's only 3 dudes. So they currently have 15 linemen on this roster, a handful of which I guarantee you some folks are looking right now saying that are you sure that's a real person? That's not like a NCAA like creative character guy. No, these are people that you will learn more about in the next month or so. I think there's only 3 linemen that are definitely making this team: J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Boyd Cushenberry. The rest, I have my opinions on who will and won't, but I could be convinced anybody else could theoretically get cut. Defensive line. Let's go to the defensive side of the ball. Jeffrey Simmons, T'Vondre Sweat, Sebastian Joseph Day. Those 3 are all definitely on this team. At edge, only 2 guys, Harold Landry and Arden Key, are definitely making the roster. At linebacker, 3 guys. Apparently, Jack Gibbons is unlocked to make this team. If it was up to me, he wouldn't be. But I can't ignore my eyes and my ears. It sure seems like he's unlocked to make this team. So Jack Gibbons, Kenneth Murray, Cedric Gray are all making the team. Those 3 linebackers. At cornerback, I think 4 guys are. You got the 3 obvious ones in Snead and Awuzie and McCreary. And then the rookie, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., I think all 4 of those definitely make the roster. At safety, 2 guys. I only think 2 are locks. I think Amani Hooker and Elijah Molden are locks. I do not think Jamal Adams is unlocked to make this team. We'll talk about that more in a second. And then specialists, Ryan Stonehouse is making this team. Granddaddy Stronglegs, Nick Folk, is making this team. And Morgan Cox, long snapper aficionado, multi-time Pro Bowl stud. He's making this team. So those are the locks. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23 of these guys are not locks, so I think there are 30 locks, 23 that are not. I'd bet if you did this exercise with every team in the NFL, more than 30 people would be locks in your mind. And I think that I mentioned that because I think it's a reflection of how much this team is in flux and how much it is a stars and scrubs model where, roughly, 40%, 45% of this team are dudes that are really battling for their spot on the roster to make the 53-man roster. So at quarterback, Levis and Rudolph are making it. I think Malik Willis gets cut. I don't think this is a controversial opinion, but maybe it is. He just screams to me he screams practice squad guy. I think folks are going to say, but the third quarterback rule. First of all, no one's ever used it. It was a rule that was made in reaction to a high profile, crazy, weird situation that happened to the 49ers in the playoffs. And Mason Rudolph is a good enough backup, but you can't justify to me needing a third guy in Malik Willis when you've got Levis and Rudolph on the roster. Is there any disagreement on that, JT?
So when I was also kind of going down my list as well, just kind of putting it together, I had the same question, but ultimately I landed at the same spot you are. I don't think you bring in a Mason Rudolph caliber type guy if you don't feel confident enough that you can roll with the 2, right? If you brought in, say, I don't know, more of a, for just going back down the rabbit hole, like a Charlie Whitehurst type of guy, like a guy who doesn't instill confidence in backing you up, then I think there is some type of world where you can have that kind of where you need 2 or 3 guys behind him. But in the case of Mason Rudolph, who has showed that he has been a reliable backup for the past 4 or 5 years, I think there is a world here where you don't really need to roll with that. Now, would Malik Willis possibly? I mean, I think this is opening up the conversation that will we see Malik Willis end up exiting this team by way of the practice squad, which I think is an interesting conversation that we'll have down the road once we get
that
past
would
the
require
53-man
somebody
roster.
else wanting him.
Exactly.
Like,
and so I think that'll be an interesting conversation if it does end up happening. But for right now, I think that isn't a conversation because I don't know if there really is another team that is looking for a Malik Willis out there. So that's where I think he does find his way on the practice squad. So I agree with you there for the quarterbacks.
So at running back, I have them keeping 3 guys. Tyjae Spears, Tony Pollard, obviously making the team. Dillon Johnson is the 3rd guy that, we've talked about a lot. We like him as a rookie option. Is he a change of pace really from those other 2? Not a huge one. Like if you're looking for the biggest different guy on this roster, it's Hassan Haskins. He is a pounded up the middle, old school back. The speed doesn't, blow you away. He's more a size guy. He's more a low end torque kind of guy. Meat and potatoes up the middle, traditional runner. Is that enough adjective for you? Good. But I don't know if they feel like they need that guy. I don't get the impression they feel like they need that guy. And so I think they keep just the next best guy. And I think Dillon Johnson is a strong candidate for preseason game star. Like, wow, did you see Dillon Johnson had 97 yards Saturday night on 11 carries? Look at that. Like he may be a thing in the NFL now. So I don't know. I have them cutting Julius Chestnut, rest in peace to the nasty nut, Hassan Haskins, and Jabari Small. Any qualms there?
No qualms. I just, when I was doing mine, I didn't cut out the idea that Julius Chestnut could end up being the 3rd guy over Dillon Johnson. I think
I'm with you on that.
His kind of rapport with the team already mixed in with, just what we've seen already from OTAs. I wouldn't be surprised if he is the front runner. However, I do agree with you that Dillon Johnson kind of brings the stability and has all the tools to be that 3rd running back on the roster who kind of fits the mold of what Brian Callahan is looking for.
Right. All right, moving along to the wide receiver position, the 4 locks are obvious, and Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, and Burks. And then I have them ultimately keeping 6 guys. So in addition to those 4, NWI and rookie Jaquan Jackson, I have Colton Dowell on the pup. That is, unless something dramatic changes, that will be happening. And then the guys that get cut are Mason Kinsey, Kyle Phillips, Trayshawn Harrison, Bryce Oliver, Kyrus Jackson, and I promise he's a real person, Sam Schnee. I don't think this is super controversial. We've talked multiple times this offseason about how in the past, the Bengals have only kept 6 receivers. I wouldn't be shocked if they kept 7, but if you ask me today what I think they would do, it's them keeping 6.
Yeah, I ended up with 7 personally here. I did have Kyle Phillips in the mix there. I think just what he's brought to this team, for the past couple of years, I feel like there is a way for them to justify keeping 7, especially if you're not going to keep a 2nd quarterback, especially if you're not going to keep 2 backup running backs, especially when we get to the next one here, where I don't think they roll with 4 tight ends to start the season. Like I think there is going to be some room to where you can kind of justify keeping Kyle Phillips on the roster so he isn't more of a practice squad scoop for somebody else. I think that's kind of where I was on that. Then I also with you was had Colton Dowell on the pup because I think we're trending towards that being the case.
So looking at these 6 I have on the team, and Hopkins, Ridley, Boyd, Burks, NWI, Jaquan Jackson, I'm at the point now where I'll be pretty surprised if any one of those guys does not make the team. So if that's the case and those 6 are in, I don't think NWI or Jaquan Jackson are locks. I'd be surprised if they miss the team, but not floored. Of the guys cut here, I have 6 guys that are cut. There are only really 2 that I think are even in the running. Like Kyle Phillips, Mason shocked me if he made the roster. What'd you say?
I didn't say anything.
Did you say Mason Kinsey?
No, I don't know where that came from.
I
think you had something in your ear.
I think it was you saying Mason Kinsey. And then the other person is Kyrus Jackson. Those are the only 2 I wouldn't be shocked to make the roster. Everybody else, like I'm afraid I do not think the Trayshawn Harrison breakout is coming this year. I'm not putting my poker chips on that one. So there's that. Tight ends, you mentioned you don't think they're keeping 4. I thought they were when I first did this, and then I counted it up, and I was like, it's 54 guys, and I spent probably 10 minutes just staring at who can I cut. and then I had to hold
Was
a
it your boy?
I had to have a small moment of mourning for taking Thomas Odukoya off the roster. So Chig and Josh Wiley definitely making this team, and then I think Nick Van Nett is also making the team. They just brought him in. He is a change of pace guy who's going to be a red zone threat, who can be an inline blocker for them, more an older veteran type. I kind of see the vision a little bit with the way that they brought him in and what they are thinking they want to do. I think there is some crossover with what his best skill set is and what Josh Wiley's best skill set. Like they're both, I think they're both red zone targets primarily, and I would prefer Josh Wiley out there than Nick Van Nett, but let's just see how they use him. Thomas Odukoya, David Martin Robinson, and Steven Stianos are guys that are not making the roster in my projection here. I wanted Thomas Odukoya in.
You could technically already put Thomas Odukoya in the practice squad since he does not count against anything, and they might as well.
Good point. I should have made him yellow here.
You should have made him yellow because he's a lock.
So here's the question with that: Can you? I need to ask Grant Carth the next time I see him. Can you just keep an international guy under the international designation on your practice squad? Doesn't count against you? Can you do that forever? Like,
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Could Thomas Odukoya be a 17-year NFL veteran without ever being without ever being a active roster player, without ever being a practice squad player, just always being an international designation player?
I know the rules about how to activate said player. I don't know.
Once you do it, it's
I
over.
don't know.
He's that way forever.
I don't know the parameters of how long that goes for, though. That's an interesting thing. I will need to research on that one.
I also wonder what's the pay structure? Is it like surely it's the same as practice squad, right? They're not making
probably
less money. That'd be just wrong. So yeah, interesting. I'll ask next time I see somebody that would know that question or know that answer. Okay, the offensive line. I have them keeping 10 guys, and like I said, I think Latham. I can't speak today. Latham and Skoronski and Cushenberry are the only 3 that are locks, and then the next 7. I cut some guys that I could see making the roster. So I guess really I said there were 15 total guys, right? So yeah, I think 12 of these guys are fighting for 7 spots, which gets ugly. But who I have making the roster behind those top 3 is NPF, Sadiq Charles, Leroy Watson, Dylan Radins, Daniel Brunskill, John Ajokwu, and Cole Spencer. Who I have getting cut is Andrew Rupchich, Garon Christian, Brian Dooley, Lachavius Simmons, and then Jalen Duncan. I think the only one that's really going to surprise folks is Jalen Duncan. He'd be the last one in here. In this case, he's the last one out. He'd be the first one in, last one out, right? Yeah. So going guy by guy, we expect MPF to be the starting right tackle. We think he's in the captain's chair for that. We think Sadiq Charles is in the captain's chair to make the roster at right guard. Leroy Watson is a guy they traded for, so I think they're going to keep him. He's a guy that I think Bill Callahan likes. Dylan Radins is a guy that we think is strongly in the running for the starting right tackle position or right guard position, and is a strong swing that can play multiple positions. Daniel Brunskill, I'm in on Daniel Brunskill. I think that he is going to be their backup center. I think that he is going to be their backup right guard. It would not shock me if he won the starting guard position because I think he's better than some folks give him credit for. John Ajokwu, Stoney's boy, we like him a lot. Wouldn't shock me if he's the backup, right tackle, because I think he's going to be competing for that job. And then Cole Spencer might have some folks go, went to Western Kentucky or Texas Tech. I don't know. I'm seeing that shade of yellow or shade of red in my head. Now I can't remember. It's either Texas Tech or what. I think it's Western Kentucky. Look this up for me, JT. But Cole Spencer, a rookie UDFA, the Titans paid a significant amount of money to, who has a lot of, he was a big deal in college and was a guy that I remember when they signed the UDFA. Texas Tech. Okay. So I was wrong. Right color red. Other than that, plain wrong. I remember reading about how he was a big deal in college and they paid him a significant amount of money, and he's got a skill set and a profile that I think Bill Callahan will like a lot. And so he's kind of, I just figured there'd be a wild card of some kind. Okay, cool. Whoa, Cole Spencer made the roster. That's who I think is in. What do you think? Do you disagree? Do you think Jalen Duncan gets in? Like, what's wrong here? Florida said transferred from WKU. So maybe I was right on both fronts, both shades of red. He just was a red guy.
So for me, I think it comes down to what you think the Garon Christian signing was. It comes during a time.
What do you think that was? Because when you ask me that question, my mind is empty. It's a storage facility that you just moved out of. I got nothing up there.
It's not something, but it's not something, right? It
Is
comes
it?
in
Are
the
you
middle.
sure it's not something?
I have no idea.
Okay.
But I mean, once
I just
again, I
don't. I
mean,
don't know. I have no feelings on
it's a
that.
guy where if you talk about the Leroy Watson and Sadiq Charles connection, Garon Christian comes from the same connection. Like
Yeah.
these are guys that
Yeah.
Bill Callahan continues to bring in, and I think that if you bring him in during the middle of OTAs, like why then? Unless he's looking for something else that he doesn't have. And so that's why I gave him the benefit of the doubt and was the last guy in for me. Cole. So then I think, which is I think an interesting conversation for Stoney to chime in on. If this was my current prediction where I had everybody here, MPF, Sadiq Charles, Leroy Watson, Dylan Radins, Daniel Brunskill, and Garon Christian, that means there is one spot for John Ajokwu, Cole Spencer, and Jalen Duncan. Which one of your three children are you going to say is the
Yeah.
favorite?
Break a pool cue 3 ways and see what happens.
Exactly. And I think that they're like you come down to the bottom line there between Ajokwu, Spencer, Garon Christian, and Jalen Duncan. I think it's a battle for 2 spots out of 4 guys. The other guys on this list here, I mean, especially Andrew Rubchich feels like it's just hanging on from the last regime. Really hasn't really flashed at all when you kind of bring up these other guys, even a guy like Jalen Duncan or John Ajokwu or Cole Spencer. You were like, these are guys that at least showed you something at OTAs, and Andrew Rubchich just hasn't done that. So besides that, I think I'm pretty chalk with your selections here.
Stoney, I think this is in response to the Garon Christian signing. He says, I think they got one look at Leroy Watson at left tackle and said, we got to get someone better to back up Latham, which is not a ringing endorsement for Leroy Watson. Glory Sports says, bring back Xavier Godwin. We don't need to do that, actually, so don't do that. Okay, let's go to the defensive side of the ball here. Defensive linemen, I think they keep 6. The locks are Simmons, Sweat, and Joseph Day. And then I have TK McClendon, Keandre Coburn, and Isaiah Aiton making the roster. Stoney in the comments saying that he is here for the Isaiah Aiton dark horse love. And then 2 cuts, Quentin Bohanna, Marlon Davidson. Thanks for stopping by. Pack your bags. I think those are the 6 they pick. Aiton I have as the dark horse here. I think McClendon and Coburn make sense. Part of it is just getting the guys around Devondre Sweat who are a good influence and can teach him how to be a pro. So I think that there's some stock there. I do. But Aiton is the guy who we talked about early on during OTAs when you didn't have Simmons out there, you didn't have Sweat out there, you didn't have Sebastian Joseph Day out there. And I was looking at this depleted room of defensive linemen. And like I said at the time, the only guy that stuck out in my mind I was like, what's his number? Where is he on the Isaiah Aiton? Interesting. He caught my eye repeatedly during drills, during practice. So I think it would not shock me at this point whether or not he makes the team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think all of those are chalk. I think, with this, the defensive line side of the ball is a lot harder for me because any one of these guys could really come out of the woodwork here. I mean, even you talk about in the next one with the edge category, Caleb Murphy in his 2nd year, like, could he be a guy? Not really, but like he could. Like there's a lot more.
Kenneth in the comments seems to think he could. So let's talk about edge. I have 2 locks in Landry and Key. I think they keep 5 total. So the 3 that I think make it in addition to Landry and Key are Rashad Weaver. Not shocking to folks. You could argue he's a lock. Actually, I don't think he is, but you could argue it. Jalen Harrell, the rookie, and Thomas Rush, who I've, again, throughout this offseason talked about. He really caught my eye. I think that he's a winner. I think that this team is going to utilize him on their roster. And I think he can be a contributor on special teams to make the back end of the roster there. I have them cutting Khalid Duke and most notably Caleb Murphy. Kenneth points out Easton Freeze, known Caleb Murphy doubter. I doubted him last offseason. I am doubting him again this offseason. You know who else is a Caleb Murphy doubter, Kenneth? Rand Carthon and the Titans, because he's not made this team. Like I'm pretty sure he got on the roster when the whole roster fell apart, but like he didn't make the team when they were actually playing ball with the dudes they want to be playing ball. I understand the pedigree coming out of a smaller college situation. Just he ate it up in D2, which is awesome, but he doesn't contribute in the way that he needs to in preseason games, at practice. He doesn't have that pop. Like when I compare him with my eyeballs, just eye test Thomas Rush and Caleb Murphy. If I brought you out there and held you next to me, we're shoulder to shoulder, and I say, take your head, and I say, look, what's the bird box? Open your eyes. Watch these 2 play. Just watch and see who you're more impressed by. I promise you that it's a stark difference. And you're gonna be like, oh, that guy, the one that's not Caleb Murphy. What's his name? Oh, Thomas Rush. Yeah, that guy's better. And so I have nothing against Caleb Murphy, none at all. I would love for him to show us in the next month where all those sacks in college were last year. Like there is reason to be excited, and he's a strong athlete. He's got length, he's got range, he's a traitsy guy. I'm not saying he can't do it. I would love for him to make the team and earn a spot on the team. It's nothing personal. I'm betting against that right now. Kenneth in the comments saying wrong. Vrabel had more control over the roster last year, so it wasn't Rand Carthen that was out. Fine, okay, Mike Vrabel was out on him, but I would bet you money that Rand Carthen was too. I really would. Okay, the linebacker room. Unfortunately, Jack Gibbons is a lock for this team, as is Kenneth Murray and Cedric. I'm really going in on Jack Gibbons. Jack, I hope you don't see this. I'm sorry. I do like you as a person, and I hope that I'm wrong about you as a player. It's just
he's going to keep some bookmarks from you.
I got to be on. Sure. I know.
He's going to keep some bookmarks from you.
I'm putting a lot on the Jack Gibbons bulletin board material list today, I'm afraid. Take it and use it, Jack. Light that fire inside you. I think that besides Gibbons, Murray, and Gray, Otis Reese and James Williams also make this roster. I don't think that's surprising. I have Luke Gifford, Chance Campbell, Garrett Wallow, and JoJo Doman being cut. Any qualms there?
Not really. Like, I think I'm with you. I think, not
going to advocate for JoJo Doman to make this team.
No, I think if there was one, Chance Campbell, maybe like
special teams would be the reason why. If you told me he made the roster, I'd say, oh, they're
Gifford would be the guy for special teams as well. I mean, he was brought in specifically for special teams last year, so I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. However, just with kind of how they're making up, I feel like they can rely on younger guys to be those special team guys and not have a need just to go sign somebody for special teams. I feel like they have enough there already.
Well, you know what that reminds me of? Remember how, Luke Gifford, you mentioned Luke Gifford being brought in for special teams from the Cowboys, I believe. And when they made that signing last year, it was like, man, Titans got their special teams ace of the offseason. And then people pointed out they have one of these every offseason. And then every year that guy doesn't do anything. And part of that was a reflection of what's the coaching like over there on special teams. And then he got fired before the season was over. So, there's that. Ackerman was not a good coach. And that was reflected by the way that he got fired. But, the Titans didn't have one this year, did they? I don't think they went out and got a guy that was a special teams ace, which is, I think, good. That's a good thing. Who cares about that?
But does that mean that they already have their special team ace in Luke Gifford? Therefore,
well, no. Here's the thing: if you're having to bill a signing, he's the post-type sleeper for special teams acery. If you're having to bill a signing as this guy is going to be bomb on punt return, then you should then don't relax about it. Relax. It's not a big signing. This is a flyer or depth signing. Don't try to hype it up to me. So yeah, that's linebacker.
Man, the writing was really on the wall last year when we were getting hyped that Luke Gifford was one of the 3 top signings last year. I mean, we were kidding ourselves.
Yeah, that was tough. That was tough. That's a great point. At cornerback, 4 guys are locks in Snead, Awuzie, McCreary, and Brownlee Jr. I'm adding 2 other players to make this a 6-man room. Gabe Judy-Lawley, he's going to continue to impress and make this team. And then Caleb Farley, I'm going to put him on the team. Now, if you had to, Easton, look at your 53-man roster here. Who's the most likely for you to be wrong about? I would say without hesitation, it's Caleb Farley, because this is wish casting. The only thing I have to base this on is vibes. Here's why I did it. If you're looking, I'm going to try to steel man this argument, because there's a lot of strong man arguments to be made about relax on Caleb Farley. I get that. Here's the steel man. Look at the guys that are cut, right? And let's include Caleb Farley in the group. So you got Caleb Farley, Trey Avery, Eric Guerrer, Anthony Kendall, Robert Xavier or Javier, and Tay Gowan. As Stoney says in the comments earlier, who the F is Tay Gowan? Fair. Of those guys, you're not excited about any of them. You're not you don't want any of them seeing the field, at least right now, unless they dramatically improve. Okay, so what can differentiate them? Okay, well, who's got the best traits? Who's got the best build? Who's got the most length? Who is the fastest? Who's got the pedigree that there's at least there's ceiling space there? And it's Caleb Farley without a doubt, right? And the reasons he's not been on this team primarily in the past has been super injured. And when he's not injured, now he's a basket case. He's a head case. He's not got the support that he needs, I guess, around him, or else he just, he's not cut out for it. Whatever it is, it's never been that the guy isn't physically capable enough, right? We know coming out of college, he's got the traits, he's got the ability. And so that's why I have him making the roster. That being said, it probably won't happen. So I don't know. What do you think?
Um, I'll make one concession here. That is, I would personally put a guy like Eric Error over Gabe Judy Lolly right now as a way too early
Wow,
predictions.
that is sober of you, but lame.
Yeah,
So
well, I
okay.
mean, if this is way too early, I mean, I'm waiting for Gabe Judy
This is the
Lolly to
time for the
continue.
hot takes, JT, not for the sober reality. This is the time
Well,
to fire off the
I,
takes.
I I just don't know if I have that horse in me to
Okay,
talk
okay.
about
All right.
a hot take. Eric Error is better than Cheeto Awuzie take right now.
Gotcha.
That's if you want me to go there, we can, but I don't think that makes for good
No, it's all right. I don't think
podcasting.
we need to
Okay,
do that.
all
I don't
right.
think we do. We this is going so long. Let's wrap up the 53-man roster here. Safety. I think they keep 4 guys. I think Hooker and Molden are locks. Jamal Adams and Matthew Jackson round that room out. The only thing to say here is, yes, I think Jamal Adams is not a lock. He's got a lot of name recognition, and that's good. He's a veteran. That's good. But they're paying him the vet minimum, and they're bringing him into a room where there's competition, but behind those top 2 guys, it would not shock me if Matthew Jackson really showed out and proved himself to be worthy of this team, and they decide they only want to keep 3, he gets bumped. Like, okay, Shaim Carter, Keaton Ellis, Mike Brown are the 3 that I had cut. Do I think Jamal Adams is not going to make the team? No, I don't. But if I am I do
Could
I
he get injured? Like, could they like
well, then
injuries
that's
could
the
be
point, right? If he by my rule at the beginning here, if he missed all of training camp, do I think he makes the roster? I think my answer is no, probably not.
Then
It's
again, I
not
think
unlocked. He's not
the
unlocked
Denard
too.
Wilson factor, I think, definitely would
Yeah, I
make a
don't know.
case.
I don't know. That's the only spice I had there. So let me run with it. Okay, so there's that, and then
But
specialists.
I agree with you. It's worth not making him a lock. I agree.
Right. And then the specialists, Stonehouse, Folk, and Cox. Very sorry to Ty Zentner and Braden Narvison, who I didn't know I didn't know he was on the team until I did this. You guys are not making the team, I'm afraid. But prove me wrong. You have the next month. Prove me wrong. Okay. Before we get out of here, we have one last thing to do, and it is the return of the news with producer JT. So without further ado, here is JT with the news.
Let's start off with a Derrick Henry trade that wasn't. I think this was something that kind of came up on everyone's timelines this morning, and also in a article from Dan Pompei in The Athletic, which kind of did a little bit of a piece on Derrick Henry and his transition to the Baltimore Ravens. And one of the most interesting pieces here is where he writes in the article about the potential Derrick Henry trade that ended up not happening. And he writes that DaCosta agreed to the framework of a trade with Tennessee general manager Rand Carthon, a 4th-round pick that could have become a 3rd had Henry reached certain production levels. However, others in the Titans hierarchy apparently were not on board with the deal. So Henry played out the season in Nashville, which brings up the point. I think a lot of people, Mike Herndon, James Foster today, what would you rather have had? The ending of Derrick Henry's tenure with the Titans, where he runs in for 150 yards in that last game, and they keep the Jacksonville Jaguars out of the playoffs, and he gives a goodbye speech in Nissan Stadium? Or would you have rather had a 3rd-round pick or 4th-round pick in this year's NFL draft? I think that's an interesting conversation.
I think there's a clear answer. Like I see folks saying, well, he wasn't worth that. A conditional 3rd-round pick that might have been a 4th round. You can't trade him for that. That's a whole lot better than the big fat steaming pile of nothing that you go with the Nathan for You bit where he brings out the fine dining china. And he's like, are you ready for nothing? That's what you got with Derrick Henry becoming a free agent and going to the Ravens for no thing in return. So at that point, I've had people bring it up to me like, oh, the Titans were 3-4 at the time, and they'd transitioned to Levis. They were coming off their bye week, going into trade deadline talks. I remember my mindset very clearly from that time, and it was that this is a team that could still technically make the playoffs. They're not dead by any means, but their limitations, their significant limitations, very clearly are going to keep them from being like this offensive line and secondary alone. I only need to know about those 2 things to know this team is not a threat to make a run in the playoffs. That was just the reality last year. And so at that point, even though you're only 3-4, certainly not dead, I think it was perfectly fair to say, let's go and sell this guy. And yes, I understand the fans' sentimentality with that goodbye and him, running for 150 yards in his final game as a Titan to bounce the Jaguars in the playoffs. All of that is fun. That is like that. I get that. I'm not begrudging you that at all. But a conditional 3rd, which some folks are saying it was going to be a 4th. I think it was going to be a 3rd because if you go and you look from that trade deadline talk week, There were 10 games after that Henry played in. And in those 10 games, he had 641 yards and 9 touchdowns. And so that was on a significantly worse offense with the Titans than he would have been on with the Ravens. So we don't know what,
I
it
was
was
gonna
going to be
say,
performance related conditions,
I'd be
whatever the
willing to
condition
bet
was.
he probably hits those conditions.
I think if they were unless they were intentionally outrageous conditions, like the point was we're never going to meet these. If they were even reasonable conditions, I think he would have met those conditions. I'm going to guess they would have been something like, okay, there are 10 games left. We'll make it a third if he plays all 10 games and rushes for 550 yards and 4 touchdowns. And like he would have met that easily by these standards. So yeah, I think it would have been a 3rd round pick. And if you want to look like, well, so what, a 3rd round pick? First of all, the Titans are in need of picks, just generally speaking. Like they're not flush with it. They're not a team where you look at, well, in 2025, they got 17 picks. No, brother. They're like, they don't even have all of their original picks. So when you look at what Ran Carthon has done with 3rd round picks in his tenure with the Titans so far, it's not been nothing. And our buddy Mike Herndon brought this up on Twitter. 4 3rd or 4th round picks that Ran Carthon has had to use, and he's used them to move up for drafting Will Levis, to draft Tyjae Spears, to trade and acquire L'Jarius Sneed, and to draft Cedric Gray. Those are meaningful things. Those are meaningful things that the Titans have been able to do with that kind of capital. And so I think on paper, there's no denying they should have made that trade. And the glaring thing here is that Carthon was ready to do it. He was going to do it. And then somebody in the Titans higher ups, maybe Mike Vrabel, maybe Amy Adams-Strunk, frankly, probably both of them, weren't crazy about it and vetoed him, which I'm glad that we actually have a GM for the Titans now that is able to do the GM things, because that is disappointing and not shocking.
Moving on here, it was an interesting point that I believe Mike Keith brought up on the OTP, the official Titans podcast, that he said the team will not wear their Oilers throwback uniforms until week 18 of the upcoming season. Of course, that is a game at home against the Houston Texans. I guess if Amy wanted to wear them for one game, I know which game it probably would have been. I guess we could have guessed this, but it is a little bit of a shame that it's only one time this year.
Yeah, thumbs up for it being against the Texans, because Team Petty. I'm about that. Double thumbs down, aggressive double thumbs down for them not, waiting really a full year to wear them again, which is not cool, because they have the coolest throwbacks in the league and they should wear them twice a year. Like I thought, last year we talked about how it became the alternate, right? It became the 3rd alternate jersey, not just their throwback as a 4th jersey, but it was replacing the light blue alternate jersey. So if that's the case, like, wear that a couple times. In the past, they wore that light blue. So now I'm confused. Are they going to not wear light blue shades at all, except for once this next year, and it's going to be in the last week? Are they going to bring back that 3rd alternate and they're going to be wearing the light blue tight? Actually, did they undo that? I'm confused on that front. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure either, but that'll be interesting to maybe dig a little bit around and figure that out.
No, somebody fancy to start a change.org petition.
Okay. Or we can go
bully them into wearing it more. Yeah. Well, I'm pro bullying on this front.
Anyways, the final thing that we have to talk about today is there were a couple of moves and hires and promotions that happened within the Titans organization. A couple new hires, including AJ Highsmith as director of scouting, Sam Somerville as senior national scout, Leland Taylor as director of football administration, Joey Glennon as video director, Aaron Schauld,
Sure.
I'm not quite sure, but
right.
We'll have to figure that one out. As football data analyst, Alex Rogers as football data analyst, and Keenan Agnew as a scouting assistant. So I guess welcome them to the club. And then there was a bunch of staff members that have been promoted. Shall I speed run these?
That's all right.
Okay. There's just a few.
There were a number of guys got promotions. Good for them. I don't really have any input on that besides Highsmith. He's the director of scouting now. Carthon has his guy implemented. No more Robinson holdovers at the top of that department. He's coming off of 5 years as a college scout for the Bills. He spent 4 years on the pro scouting side with the 49ers, which is where he had that crossover with Ran Carthon in the Bay Area. So that seems to be his guy, and hopefully we get to speak to him eventually.
And that'll be all for today.
All right, that is JT with the news, and that is our show today, folks. Again, the next time you hear our beautiful voices will be post practice, post Titans football occurring at St. Thomas Sports Park. So looking forward to that. First day of practice that media can go to will be on Tuesday. Either JT or I or both of us will be there. Whoever is there will be reporting back on what they heard and they saw at the episode that afternoon around 4:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until then, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. That's big for us to continue to build that brand up. A lot more YouTube videos and clips, not just full shows over there coming to you all season long. So please subscribe to that and check that out. Turn on notifications. That's your kind of thing. Make sure you're following us on social media at Hot Read Pod on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. For producer JT, until next week, have a great final weekend without new Titans news. We'll talk to you on Tuesday.